President Biden has signed a series of executive orders to tackle climate change, which he's described as an existential threat. He said the US must lead the global response, having already waited too long to tackle the crisis. A row has escalated between the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca and the European Union over a shortage of coronavirus vaccines. The EU has rejected suggestions that its contract with the company to supply the bloc didn't come with a binding commitment. The British government has announced that residents returning from South Africa, Portugal and much of South America will have to quarantine in a hotel for 10 days. And commemorations to mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day are being held in the German Parliament. Germany's Foreign Ministry Heiko Maas said the problem of anti-Semitism has not disappeared, but rather keeps shape-shifting.
Pope Francis marks the 76th anniversary of the freeing of the World War II death camp in Auschwitz, Poland. German Nazi forces killed more than 1 million Jews there. Myanmar begins COVID-19 vaccinations with a supply of AstraZeneca's drug donated by India. Ahmad Syed Omar Sheikh admits to a Pakistani appeals court that he played a part in the 2002 murder of American reporter Daniel Pearl. Sheikh described his involvement as minor. And Indonesia's Mount Merapi explodes on the island of Java, releasing melted rock and clouds of ash.
We begin here in Tokyo, where the Prime Minister has apologized for 2 lawmakers who went on a night out in the middle of a state of emergency. It comes at a time when surging coronavirus cases are putting intense strain on the medical system.
I am extremely sorry that something like this happened while the government is asking people to avoid non-essential outings and dining out after 8 p.m.
News emerged this week. 2 members of the ruling coalition ate at Tokyo restaurants and went to nightclubs. Suga told an upper house committee lawmakers should act in a way that the people can support. He pledged to take firm action to deal with the issue. Tokyo and 10 other prefectures are under the state of emergency. It's set to expire on February 7th, but the government is reportedly considering an extension. Cases in the capital are on a slow decline, but Wednesday still saw more than 970 new infections, and experts say the virus appears to be spreading among the elderly. The head of the government's expert panel says we should see the full effect of the declaration in numbers reported later this week or early next. The situation is prompting questions about the postponed Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics. But Suga says the government remains committed to hosting the major international event.
In order to fully concentrate on the antivirus measures, will you reconsider whether the Tokyo Games really need to be held?
To realize a safe and secure games, anti-infection measures are extremely important. We are considering the details now. We will make preparations in cooperation with the organizers, including the IOC, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, and the Tokyo Organizing Committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games.
The minister in charge stressed the International Olympic Committee has confirmed a timeline for the Games, set to kick off in July. Japan is stepping up vaccine preparations with the hope of rolling out shots late next month. Officials near Tokyo held a drill on Wednesday to see how to best deliver vaccinations. They tested the full process, from filling out paperwork to checking for initial signs of adverse reactions. The health ministry plans to share the results with municipalities so they know what to expect. Now, several countries have already gotten vaccines from various drug makers into the arms of millions of people. Now Israel, which leads the world in per capita vaccinations, is seeing results. A public healthcare provider that's been doling out a vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech has released preliminary but promising data. It suggests only 0.01% of people contracted the virus a week after receiving their second dose. Maccabee Healthcare Services says more than 125,000 people got both doses. Only 20 tested positive for the virus. Israel is conducting an aggressive campaign in combination with a nationwide lockdown. As of Tuesday, 2.7 million people, or more than 30% of the country's population, has received a shot. It aims to vaccinate every adult by the end of March. Now, non-profit groups here in Japan are ramping up support for foreign residents who face challenges due to the pandemic. Staff of non-profit organization ABC Japan have been packing food boxes for households that ask for help. The Yokohama-based group has been delivering food since last spring to foreign residents in Kanagawa Prefecture who are economically struggling.
Many foreigners lost their jobs or saw their working hours reduced because of the pandemic. There's not much help available, so we thought we should do something for them.
The organization says food donations are dropping, even as it predicts more foreigners will need help as their unemployment insurance expires. Officials are also working on support for those who can't seek medical care because they don't speak Japanese. The Chiba International Center, commissioned by the prefecture, offers a free telephone consultation service in 12 languages to those who have fevers or other symptoms.
We also provide translation service, so I want foreign residents to feel free to contact us.
The center refers foreigners to specialized clinics nearby and helps them communicate with medical staff. The service is available only by phone while the state of emergency is in effect. Turning now to Myanmar, where authorities have started administering coronavirus vaccines that have been provided by India free of charge. Healthcare workers began receiving shots on Wednesday in Myanmar's largest city of Yangon. The vaccines were developed by Britain's AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford and were made in India. Myanmar received 1.5 million doses from New Delhi last week. Myanmar is facing a budget crunch, which has forced the government to seek public donations to purchase coronavirus vaccines. A volunteer worker at a makeshift hospital expressed his gratefulness after receiving a shot.
We have to thank India for its consideration for us.
India's donation came after Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi offered to supply 300,000 doses free of charge when he visited Myanmar earlier this month. Myanmar is located in a strategically important position between China and India, which are both vying to expand their influence in the country. And the vaccine diplomacy seen between China and India highlights the conflicting interests the countries have in Myanmar. At the center of Beijing's plans for the region is the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. As part of its Belt and Road Initiative, the massive infrastructure project will link inland China with Myanmar's ports on the Indian Ocean. India has expressed concerns about the project because of national security. An expert says it's a delicate balancing act for Myanmar.
As Myanmar does not want to strain the relationship between it and its two neighbors, it is trying to strike a balance between both sides. Myanmar has to be careful because if it mishandles the situation, it could find itself the site of a proxy war between the major powers.
An Indian expert says both India and China have been actively supplying vaccines to developing countries as a key component of their diplomacy. He says it's become a diplomatic power struggle.
India is also one of the world's largest manufacturer of pharmaceutical products and cheap pharmaceutical products. India scores higher and better than the Chinese do.
Foreign ministers of the Group of Seven Nations have condemned the detention and arrest of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. They're demanding his immediate and unconditional release. The G7 issued a joint statement describing Navalny's confinement as politically motivated. Navalny was detained earlier this month as he returned to Moscow from Germany. He had received medical treatment in Germany after being poisoned with a suspected nerve agent. The arrest triggered demonstrations across Russia. Thousands of protesters have been rounded up. The G7 statement says it's also deeply concerned by the detention of peaceful protesters and journalists. It urges Russia to release them and guarantee people's rights, including freedom of expression. The government insists Navalny's arrest was not politically motivated. Japan's nuclear regulator has approved a draft report on the Fukushima nuclear accident 10 years ago and its aftermath. It says decommissioning work at the power plant could be hampered by severe contamination at reactor buildings. 3 reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi plant suffered meltdowns after a devastating earthquake and tsunami in 2011. Hydrogen explosions caused radioactive material to spew out. The Nuclear Regulation Authority says the contamination in some places is worse than expected. These include the structures above the containment vessels at reactors 2 and 3 called shield plugs. The report estimates they're contaminated with up to 10% of the radioactive material believed to have been inside the 3 reactors before the meltdowns. The head of the NRA says it's extremely difficult to protect against such high radiation.
There are highly radioactive materials like fuel debris on top of the containment vessels. That could definitely affect how decommissioning work proceeds.
The regulator is expected to finalize the report by the end of March after seeking comment from the public. Next, in Western Japan, a lasting testament to the horrors of nuclear war is getting new life. Workers are preserving the Hiroshima Peace Memorial, one of few structures to survive an atomic bombing. Also known as the Atomic Bomb Dome, it stood for 100 years. Work to protect the decaying structure began in September after a lack of interest in the restoration contract forced significant delays. Reporters got the chance on Wednesday to see how work is progressing, including painting these steel frames. They'll now match the color shown in a photo taken soon after the bombing.
By bringing back the color it had right after the atomic bombing, I hope both local residents and people around the world will be reminded of the tragedy.
Workers are also using historically accurate materials, including lime, to fix damage. The work is now 70% complete and is set to wrap up by the end of March. A powerful tornado ravaged the U.S. state of Alabama this week, leaving at least 1 person dead. Our meteorologist Jonathan O explains the situation in our World Weather Report.
Hello, it looks like that we're going to still be dealing with some storms down to the southeastern portions of the United States. We had a powerful line of storms that rolled through the region over the past couple of days, and sadly there was a tornado that struck part of Alabama. I wanted to show you some video to give you an idea of how things turned out when this storm rolled through. A tornado ripped through a city north of Birmingham Monday, left a trail of destruction in the process. A 14-year-old boy who was trapped in a basement was killed, and 30 people have been hospitalized, several people critically wounded. You can see the pieces of structure, furniture, appliances, and trees being strewn about. One car landed upside down against tree branches on a large pile of debris, and the National Weather Service is estimating that the twister was an EF3. We are looking at a possibility of seeing some more thunderstorms as we go through Wednesday. Now, the same system may also pull in a lot of cold air. We're talking about some snow possibilities not only into the mountains, but also into probably some of the lower areas of the Carolinas, North Carolina into Virginia, and so be on the lookout for that. Back toward the west, another low pressure system coming into California, bringing blizzard conditions into the mountains and heavy rain possible down towards Southern California. The mountains may also be dealing with some snow down there as well as we go through the rest of this week. Looking at Thursday's forecast, wet weather along the Pacific coast. Looking at drier weather toward the east. Once we see the systems clear the coastline, we will be dealing with sunnier weather for Thursday along the Atlantic seaboard. Across Japan,